All right, welcome. If your nonprofit partners with businesses to raise money, there's a term you absolutely positively need to know: commercial co-ventures. So today we're going to break down exactly what they are and, more importantly, how to manage them the right way.
And just so you know, this explainer is part of the Multi-State Fundraising Compliance series. It's brought to you by Ironwood Registrations, and our whole goal here is to bring some much-needed clarity to these kinds of complex topics for nonprofit leaders just like you.
Okay, so we all know that corporate partnerships can be just a huge engine for a nonprofit's growth. I mean, they can unlock brand new funding streams and bring some really incredible visibility to your mission.
And it usually starts with a really simple but powerful idea, right? A business agrees to donate a portion of its sales, you launch a joint marketing campaign, and bam, suddenly your message is reaching a whole new audience.
It really is a classic win-win situation. Brand visibility just explodes for both the nonprofit and the company. But, and this is a big but, what a lot of people don't realize is that this very common setup actually has a specific legal name. And yeah, it comes with its own set of rules.
And that name is a commercial co-venture. So what is it, formally? Well, it's any arrangement where a for-profit business advertises that if you buy their stuff, their goods or services, it's going to benefit a charity. And because a consumer transaction is involved, well, that's when the states get interested. This is an area they often regulate. So, here's our roadmap for today. We're going to walk through what these ventures actually are, how they're regulated, the core compliance requirements you absolutely need to know, how to steer clear of some common pitfalls, and finally, we'll wrap up with some key best practices to make sure your partnership is a huge success.
All right, let's dive right in with a clear definition. What exactly makes an arrangement a commercial co-venture? What's the secret sauce?
Legally speaking, it really just boils down to three key elements. First, there's a representation made to the public. Second, there's a promise that a transaction, a purchase, supports a charity. And third, of course, there's a nonprofit beneficiary. If you've got all three of those things, you are almost certainly looking at a commercial co-venture.
And this brings us to a really critical distinction. A commercial co-venture is directly tied to a consumer purchase. That's the main thing that separates it from, say, a corporate sponsorship, where a company just gives a flat donation for some brand recognition. The second a consumer's purchase is what triggers that donation, boom, the rules of the game change.
So you might be wondering, why do state regulators even get involved in these things? Well, it all boils down to two things: consumer protection and making sure everyone's responsibilities are crystal clear.
The number one motivation for state regulation here is protecting the consumer. Regulators want to make sure the public isn't being misled. They need to check that the nonprofit is actually, authorized the promotion. They want to verify that the promised donation gets paid in full. And they need to know that consumers really understand how their purchase is making an impact. Okay, it's really important to understand who's responsible for what here. While the for-profit company, they're called the co-venturer, usually handles the main compliance burden, the nonprofit is not just a passive beneficiary. You are a key active partner in this whole process.
Okay, let's get into the practical side of things. We're going to break down the three pillars of a fully compliant campaign. You've got the contract, the filings, and the public disclosures.
First up, the written contract. In a lot of states, this is completely non-negotiable. Think of it as your foundational document. It has to clearly spell out the campaign's scope and how long it'll run, the exact amount or percentage per sale that's being donated, when the payments will be made, and what the record-keeping obligations are for the business.
Next up are the state registrations and filings. And, this is where it can get really complex because the rules vary so much from state to state. Your business partner might need to register before the campaign even starts, file a copy of your contract with the state, maybe even submit a bond, and then provide detailed accounting reports after it's all over.
And then there's transparency in your advertising. This is huge. All your marketing materials have to clearly state the name of your nonprofit, the exact dollar amount or percentage per purchase that's being donated, if there's any cap on the total donation, and the campaign start and end dates. That kind of vague language, like a portion of proceeds will be donated, that's often not compliant.
All right, now let's talk about some of the real-world complexities. Because even with the absolute best intentions, it's pretty easy to run into issues, especially when you're dealing with multi-state campaigns and some really common misunderstandings.
Just think about it for a second. The moment a campaign is promoted online or on social media, it instantly has a national reach. And that means you have to evaluate your compliance against each state's separate rules. Something that's perfectly fine in California might not fly in New York or Illinois.
And this brings us to one of the most common and frankly most dangerous misconceptions we hear from nonprofits all the time. It's this idea that, oh, we don't need to worry about it, the company's handling everything.
The reality, that is a very, very risky assumption. The nonprofit must actively authorize the campaign, you have to ensure a compliant contract is in place, and you need to provide oversight to protect your name, your reputation, and your donors. Remember, you are an active partner here, not just a passive recipient.
So how do you do this the right way? Let's walk through a final checklist of best practices that will really help set your organization up for success.
Okay, here's a 5-step checklist to run through before you launch. 1. Confirm exactly where the campaign will run. 2. Make sure a compliant contract is fully executed. 3. Verify that your corporate partner has completed all the required filings. 4. Personally review the marketing language for absolute clarity. And 5. Align on the exact timelines for payments and financial reporting.
Ultimately, it all comes down to being proactive. Taking the time to understand these rules before you launch is truly the best way to protect your organization, your corporate partners, and the trust you've worked so hard to build with the public. It really is the foundation for a smooth and successful partnership.
Just remember this: clarity at the outset prevents so much disruption later on. Taking that extra time to build a compliant foundation is what allows these incredible partnerships to truly flourish and maximize their impact for your mission.